My name is Chris Folkman. I'm the VP of Product for Guidewire Analytics, and I would like to welcome you today to Making Smart Decisions with Live Insights. Before we get started today, just like to show our safe harbor statements. Certain materials that will be discussed today have forward-looking statements and as such are subject to change, so please be advised of that. Thank you very much. And with that behind us, we can talk a little bit about today's agenda. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what Guidewire Live is, what solutions and capabilities it entails, and talk about what powers it, which we call Smart Loop Analytics, some of the data pipelines and the capabilities underlying our Guidewire Cloud platform. We'll talk a little bit about the individual data and application capabilities in the Guidewire Live suite. We can talk a little bit about the Guidewire Analytics Live roadmap, what we're delivering with Dobson, what we're focusing on for the Elysian next spring's release, and some of the longer-term R&D initiatives, irons that we have in the fire beyond that. And at the end, I will leave time for Q&A. So hold your questions until the end. I'll leave a little time, and then Todd is going to circulate with a microphone, and he can hand the microphone off as necessary. So with that, I will start by orienting around a problem that I'm sure comes as no surprise to many of us in the room from a McKinsey study a few years ago, that insurers collect a wealth of data, but to this point, few have actually found a way to fully monetize this asset. And in fact, inside any insurer, you'll find tons and tons of data. Policy, claims, exposure, transactions, third-party data sets, behavioral data sets, external data, telematics. Now, the problems with all of this data is it's a living and breathing set of data sets. There is the necessity to capture multiple time dimensions for backtesting and modeling purposes. The data has to be stored in a way that insights can be extracted from it in a capable manner. And overall, I would say the industry's ability to transform all of this data into insight at scale is nascent, right? There are some cohorts of insurers that are very, very advanced and sophisticated in their ability to do this quickly. And there are others that are just starting on their journey. Some would argue that our capability as an industry trails behind some peer industries like fintech, but there's a wide dispersion in there. And at Guidewire Analytics, we want to supercharge the industry's maturity in being able to monetize this asset of data, because we think that core systems in 5 or 10 years are going to have a lot of this type of insight just baked inside of them. And we are trying to lead the charge in that regard. So that is why we are bringing to market and accelerating the development of Guidewire Live. Now, if you can think of this as a series of persona-focused applications and some data solutions that come along with them. And you heard a little bit Julie talk about them at this morning's keynote, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about it today. Starting at the bottom with focusing on easy access to 3 types of data: your own data, third-party, behavioral, and Hazard Hub data. As you may be aware, we acquired Hazard Hub in August, and we have big plans for their property attribute data. And then the third type of data is cooperative data. We have a database of tens of millions of claims that can be leveraged on an anonymized, aggregated basis to compare your operations and claims compared to that of peers and industry. This is all powered by the Guidewire data platform, and sitting on top of the platform is 5 different capabilities. Explore, data visualization and BI monitoring tool. Assess, which is data delivered quickly at scale for underwriting and modeling. Predict, which was our predictive analytics solution and series of ML sandboxes. Respond, an application to manage the impact of a real-time active catastrophe, the claims and the policies and the event footprints all under one roof. And then finally, compare for claims benchmarking and measuring claims operations performance and excellence. So these 5 applications, each one of them is focused on a very specific persona. And we think we are going to be targeting personas throughout the P&C life cycle. Starting with Explore, which is typically used by claims managers and underwriting managers for things like monitoring caseloads and claims operations on the claim side. On the underwriting side, submission flow and hit rate and decline rate and activity in an underwriting department. Assess is data for modeling and underwriting purposes, typically used by underwriters and risk managers. It can be surfaced inside Policy Center. It can be sprinkled into a predictive model to make it more performant. Predict, our predictive analytics capability, has two constituencies that use it. Data science and actuaries are the ones building and training the model, and we're focusing on a lot of data pipelines from InsuranceSuite to sort of take a lot of the data wrangling process and smooth that out for them. And then the consumers of the insight from these models are claims adjusters and underwriters that look at scores that come from these models and the drivers of those scores. Claims adjusters and managers are the primary users of Respond in the context of an active catastrophe or a historical one to sort of do some what-if scenario testing to manage all of the stakeholders that need time-sensitive information in the course of a CAT. And then finally, Compare is typically used by claims managers to see how their operations are performing, how they have performed over time, and how they stack up against those of their peers. Finally, the underlying data platform that are feeding these applications is used by data scientists to get at exactly the kind of data that they need in the format that they need. So those are the personas underlying Guidewire Live. This capability is powered by what we call the Guidewire Smart Loop. We talked to lots and lots of our customers, and we heard common themes around the pain points of making analytics and core systems work better together. So we're focused on paving that way and smoothing it for three different capabilities. Leveraging more data, your own external and anonymized data. Once that data can be accessed and you can enrich it with relevant predictive third-party data, that begins the modeling and the analytics creation process, where you can build a series of models, you can take those resulting analytics and embed them back in Policy Center in a very straightforward manner. We are building out much more open source support for existing tool sets that are in use inside actuarial and data science departments today. And that sort of is the idea behind our Bring Your Own Model initiative, which we are expanding every release. And then the third capability is to learn continuously. Once you have models in production, at the point of underwriting, or in a claims operation, to measure the impact of the models, to see how they perform, to see if a model is drifting off course or staying on course, and to make any needed adjustments on the fly. We think that every revolution around the loop will make your operations a little bit smarter and a little bit faster and a little bit more effective and able to seize more opportunities because we want it to drive greater business agility. So let's go into a little more detail on each one of these capabilities. Starting with data, access to your own data is going to be enabled by our Data Studio application, which reads off a conformed view on the data platform and gives you a SQL-like experience to get easy, fast access to your own data in a very straightforward way. Once that data set is locked down, you can send it either to Predict, our predictive analytics application, to Explore, to visualize and create BI dashboards, or you can even send it outside and put it in a CSV file and build a bunch of pivot tables on it. In any case, we want to sort of democratize this data and make it easily accessible to you so you can get at it faster. The second type of data, curated third-party data. Guidewire for the past 3 years has been quietly building out what I believe to be one of the leading data sets in the P&C industry for the purposes of underwriting or modeling. And the capabilities underlying that are our acquisition of Science in 2017, which gave us data ingestion capabilities at scale. We call it the data listening engine. And on the property side, we acquired Hazard Hub, which is a leading vendor of property attribute, property risk data, and very, very performant models that can be used for lots of different use cases. These are just a few of the data types that we have found to have some underwriting or modeling value in the past, but there's more than 1,000 of them easily accessible through a UI or in bulk via an API. And then finally, anonymized peer data. This is for benchmarking your operations versus industry. There's an underlying database of 33 million claims, part of the Guidewire Data Cooperative, and members of the cooperative receive access to this in an anonymized, aggregated form to see how the industry is trending and see how your operations are trending. And I would recommend that each of you go to the Data Cooperative talk here at Connections, led by Scott Fitzgerald. It's called A Rising Tide. And he will go into a lot of detail about the Guidewire Data Cooperative, which we are providing as a service to our InsuranceSuite customers. Okay, so that is data. We realize that the resulting analytics that are created on all of this data are only valuable when they are actually deployed, when they actually go into production, and underwriters and claims adjusters are actually gaining insight from all of these models, whether they're your own actuarial models or some of the models in the data that we're curating in-house and just including with the Guidewire Cloud. We created an embedded analytics tool set, which makes it very easy to wire up a predictive model and use it wherever you want in a workflow. And this is just an example of one of the UIs that is easy to configure here, surfacing data in the form of red, yellow, green indicators depending on model score, using predictive analytics tools to recommend an action, or it could be a discretionary credit or a next step or a coverage depending on the model response. And then showing the underwriter how much impact each of the attributes that you feed it contributes to the overall model score. We're a big fan of promoting model transparency, moving away from black box modeling, and showing the drivers of the score that everybody is seeing. So we think the capability of the predictive analytics are bring your own model, ability to use existing models, any model built anywhere in any format, and the integration accelerator that's included in Policy Center and Claims Center will hopefully pave the way for greater, more effective, faster usage of any analytics inside InsuranceSuite. One of the things I really like about this sort of analytics framework is its ability to configure, predictive analytics solutions and then tie them to workflow actions, and in a very codeless way. Or if you want to get super technical and get your GoSu on, you can create decision trees and very, very complicated workflows, but we accommodate both solutions in a very straightforward way. And this tool sort of governs how the model or the solution is called, any third-party call. It can be to Hazard Hub, it can be to predictive analytics, it can be to a third-party tool. Govern how it's called, when it should be called. Is it at FNOL or at submission intake? What to do with all of the results, whether that be all the way to straight-through processing, trigger that kind of process, or some underwriter referral, or a rate adjustment. And finally, how to display the results in the UI. There is no limitation. The only constraint here is like your imagination. This tool can do a lot of things with a lot of different solutions. And if you haven't seen a demo of it, I would definitely recommend to reach out and we can show it to you. It just sort of lives inside on the left-hand side of Claims Center and Policy Center. So the idea here is to make analytics much easier to use inside Policy Center or Claims Center without the need for a long, expensive IT project that inhibits really this model excellence and radical experimentation that we want to enable. All right, so we realize part of making analytics easy to use is accommodating the use of existing tools on our platform, and that is the idea behind Bring Your Own Model. Now we realize data science capabilities are expanding exponentially out there in the big world. There is a proliferation of open source tools. And again, this kind of radical experimentation, building dozens or hundreds of models and choosing the right one and spinning it up and seeing what the impact on a portfolio is behavior that we want to cultivate because we think it will lead to much better underwriting and claims outcomes. So the idea is use a tool of your choice. A lot of actuaries, data scientists using Python, R, PMML is a common one. We're allowing secure access to most of the popular open source libraries. And with the data pipelines moving in and out of Policy Center, Claims Center, we think the combination of these capabilities should enable most use cases for almost all types of models. So that's Bring Your Own Model. Once a model is brought in and operationalized, there is the need to monitor its performance. And we're working on a number of exhibits, some of which will be included with adoption release, some right after, with monitoring model performance. And you can see here, this lives in our Predict application, a score distribution. When you train a model, there's a certain distribution that's expected of the scores to come back. Some will receive very good scores, some will receive very bad scores, and a lot will sort of lay in between. If that distribution over time starts to change, it could be a leading indicator of a number of things in your portfolio. Could mean that your book mix is changing. Could mean that you have new distribution sources that are feeding you submissions of a kind that you've never seen before. Either way, this could be an early indicator of the need to take a closer look at what is driving that change. And then on the right, you can see the breakdown by variable to drill down one level of detail and see the individual variables that are feeding the model and getting the scores, and if those proportions are changing over time too. You can see here the auto theft indicator. It's about 50% yes and no. If that starts to change over time, it might mean some stuff about your funnel and your top line submission activity, and that might be worth drilling down in conjunction and collaboration with underwriting. So that's on the model monitoring side, which is typically handled by an actuary or data scientist. How about if I put a model into production, is it actually having the intended impact on my actual business? And this is a series of dashboards that we will be rolling out this year on the Guidewire Cloud platform, starting with individual lines of business and individual use cases, and then expanding over time using our data visualization capabilities. And you can see here, we actually created a total loss likelihood model from our cooperative data and put it in use. And the idea is if we actually can effectively identify total losses at the outset, then we should be able to impact our cycle time in a materially beneficial way. And in fact, you can see before and after the model was put into production with that dotted line, and you can see that line trend downward in terms of cycle time. You can do the same thing with cost components on the bottom left. See before and after. Are my cost components of a claim and the overall proportion changing? And then finally, how is my model performing? Is it actually, are the predictions that it make actually holding true? And when a model is doing something like predicting a binary outcome, is this claim going to be litigated or not? Is this auto a total loss or not? You want to track both the false positives and the false negatives, as well as the true positives and the true negatives when it's guessing. And you want to make sure on some regular routine cadence that the model is actually creating the right predictions with the benefit of hindsight. And so we're going to be creating a number of dashboards that enable this sort of model tracking, model performance, rather than doing it on an ad hoc basis, which is sort of how we see it done in industry today, to do it more routinely by just logging on and seeing performance dashboards. Okay, so that's sort of the smart loop operations. Now let's get to each one of the applications in Guidewire Live, starting with compare, to compare claims operations against a different time frame or against industry. One of the things I really, really like about this application is its simplicity. You log in, you choose a date range, you choose view 1 and view 2, and you click compare. And that's it. The view 1 and view 2 can be my operations versus industry. They can be my operations last year compared to my operations this year, year to date. They can be one division of mine compared to another division of mine. Across a lot of very important operational highlights. Litigation, cycle time, indemnity paid, salvage, subrogation. Our customers use compare to answer a number of questions, including how are my settlement rates compared to the industry for my particular line of business. Litigation is another focus. With the environment as it is today, litigation rates are rising. To be able to ask, are my litigation rates increasing either quarter over quarter or year over year? That's something tracked very carefully today. And how do I stack up on subrogation and salvage? Am I recovering everything that I possibly can? So this is enabled by our industry benchmarking capabilities, and that's the compare database of 33 million anonymized aggregated claims. We will only surface the benchmark if there are 3 or more participants, so there are some safeguards there. And compare, the application is free to use for everyone as part of the data cooperative. So again, that will be covered in Scott Fitzgerald's presentation. But I think the data cooperative is something that I think the industry, as a collaboration mechanism, can use to gain greater insight about industry trends and about different types of benchmarks across different claims operational dimensions. All right, so the next application is Explore, our data visualization and BI capability, striving to answer, are we on track to make our numbers? This sits natively on top of the Guidewire data platform. You can see lots of data and draw quick insights from it. Again, you can take data out of the platform by using the Data Studio application and just send it right to Explore to create lots of delightful visualizations on it. And it's typically used on the underwriting side for operational metrics, submission flow, hit rate, declinations, underwriting activity, as well as on the claims side to monitor caseloads and claims activity to see if there's capacity or undercapacity in a claims operations. And some of the ways that it is used around submission flow, how is it doing for my top known distribution sources? We've seen, given an average hit rate that we know about a segment of business, am I actually going to hit my premium target for this particular month as a forecasting capability? And then finally, adjuster caseloads. Do I need to hire ahead of schedule? How are my caseloads across my organization? And since this is sort of reading natively off real-time claims activity, feeding directly out of Claims Center, creating these visualizations are fairly straightforward. Okay, the next application is Respond, and this is for real-time CAT management. Prior to Guidewire, I spent 8 years at RMS building various types of CAT models, so I know firsthand how very stressful it can be inside the 4 walls of a P&C insurer during an active catastrophe. You have lots of different stakeholders demanding lots of information on a very time-sensitive basis. The executives typically want to know, what's the number, right? You can't answer that with any degree of certainty until sometime after. The reinsurance managers want to know if it's going to penetrate reinsurance and if they need to be talking to their counterparties. Underwriting wants to know if they need to reach out proactively to policyholders. Claims managers need to know what the claims volume is going to look like and if they need to deploy TPAs. So there's a very stressful situation, and I think Respond is a very elegant way that surfaces and visualizes all your claims and all of your policies and the real-time event footprint. As soon as the government agency updates it, be it the National Hurricane Center for a landfalling hurricane, or MODIS, the satellite imagery for a wildfire, we have earthquake footprint data that we can visualize. And it's easy to kind of see that and how it may impact your portfolio to be able to perform a lot of those time-critical, mission-critical activities in the context of an active CAT. So some of the questions that are asked and Respond is used to answer are, who are the policyholders facing a substantial claim? How much exposure, how much limits do I have currently in the footprint of the event or in the forecasted footprint of the event? Where should I direct third-party adjusters and claims triage efforts? And finally, by way of an API call to Claims Center, and you can get this directly in Claims Center, is this claim inside the event footprint? Is it legitimate? And that is, if you have claims incoming from a hail outbreak or a hurricane, one of the checks you might want to perform, and we can do this programmatically, is to see is that geocoded claim actually inside the footprint. A number of things that we have seen, particularly with hail outbreaks, there's some claims leakage. There are claims submitted that were technically outside the swath, and they might warrant an extra look by an on-site claims adjuster. So these are capabilities that we're baking into Claims Center by way of the geospatial information in the Respond application. All right, so moving from apps to data capabilities, how do I better understand property risk? And Hazard Hub represents the property side of our very broad data catalog. I think one of the reasons that we acquired them is because being Guidewire, we are in a unique position with our knowledge of workflows to be able to take this very performant, very relevant data and infuse it in Policy Center or application screens in exactly the right screen at exactly the right time. And some of the information that we are curating across the property and casualty landscape, stuff like safety violations, wage violations, driving records, consumer sentiment, demographics, crime, firmographics, operating hours, and of course property attribute data. This stuff is very useful for underwriting, it's useful for pre-fill, and it's very nice in a way to enrich predictive models to make them have better lift, better performance, and more generalizable. So with Hazard Hub and its more than 120 customers, some of the ways in which we see this used is given two identical looking submissions, which one has lower susceptibility to hail. How much of my book is inside a 100-year flood zone? This is a common curiosity that a chief underwriting officer might ask, after a flood event, on a portfolio basis, what am I looking at? How much do I actually have exposed? And it's pretty easy to do that with some basic accumulation capabilities and the data that Hazard Hub provides in a very quick manner. And then finally, how can I pre-fill screens so my applicants don't have to? Pre-fill, we are moving as an industry towards what we call zero question underwriting, the idea that you could just put in an address or a business and not actually have to ask any questions. You can just issue a quote. We are slowly inching towards that through the use of data and analytics. And in some places like the United Kingdom, we're actually pretty close to that for certain types of property and certain types of markets where everything you kind of need to know to issue a quote is just baked into the address. But Hazard Hub is one of the accelerants, I think, of this process, particularly on the property side. So, and then finally, how can I market to high-value homes in high flood risk areas? One of the key uses is for prospecting, for market segmentation. If we have a list of all 155 million mailable addresses in the US, and we also geospatially know exactly where the flood risk areas are, then we can marry those two data sets together very quickly at scale and provide something like a prospecting list. Give me every structure that's worth more than $2 million in flood zone B. I think I can compete very well in this segment. Give me the list, right? And these are the kinds of things from a prospecting basis that can be achieved. So if you haven't already checked out Hazard Hub, I'd encourage you to either go to the Guidewire Live booth on the floor or just go to api.hazardhub.com, register, play around with the API. We'll run 1,000 locations. If you like, test it against your prior claims. The models perform very, very well, and we would welcome the opportunity to test them with your actuarial teams. So, okay, so that's the 4 applications as well as the data capability. Before we can do a little Q&A at the end of this, but first I will go a little bit over some of the things that we have in store on the Guidewire Live product roadmap. So now we will be delivering in November with the Dobson release a lot more third-party data, and we're optimizing the delivery mechanism to provide it faster. Our Predict application has some advanced text mining, the most advanced available today, and the ability to mine through a claims adjuster notes or a claim description or correspondence or any kind of unstructured data and see relevant predictive insights from that in a multivariate capacity is pretty spectacular. The drag and drop possibility, you're building a model, you add all the normal variables and then just add the text fields as a normal feature, we think will improve the performance of the predictive models that are being built on our platform. Some administrative stuff with single sign-on, full internationalization, and of course a lot deeper support for open source tooling that is already in use in our Predict application. Next up, we're going to take all of this goodness and it's going to go into Insurance Now and not just InsuranceSuite. We will be releasing some pre-built data cooperative models from our data cooperative and the tens of millions of claims that are in there, and we will be making those available to members of the cooperative. We're adding new curated predictive data sources. Our data curation engine is basically find a good data set. Some of them we buy, some of them we find. Test it for relevance, make sure it's stable, make sure it's accurate, make sure it has good coverage, and then make sure it's actually predictive. And if it passes all of our filters, we load it up for your use in the Guidewire platform. If not, we toss it aside. So we're going to, every release, add a bunch of new stuff. Business impact monitoring dashboards, as I showed the little mock-ups there, we're going to be rolling those out line by line. And then weather fraud alerts to say, was this claim actually inside the event footprint or outside? The future, some of the R&D initiatives, obviously we're going to be curating a lot of data and analytics for both the EMEA and APAC regions. We will offer complete international support, every currency, every language, for all live applications. We're going to accommodate some code-first workflow for data scientists, for those that are, in love with their green screen or Jupyter Notebook. Lots of model building within the comfort of a Python script or a Jupyter Notebook, and we're going to enable that kind of workflow. And then we're going to expand the compare application, that benchmarking application, to include not just claims operational metrics, but also metrics on the underwriting side. The last one here is an industry classification API. This is sort of an R&D initiative we have. Given the web scraping and data science and predictive modeling capabilities we have, coupled with all of the data sources that we have curated, we think we have a good line of sight to create a series of models to accurately predict something like the NAICS code of a business or the bureau code of a workers' comp risk. And as we hear from our customers that classification is an ongoing sort of pain point, this is one of the things that we're going to look as a way to surface these kinds of insights. Okay, so that's an abbreviated roadmap and a whirlwind tour of all of the applications and solutions in Guidewire Live. In terms of key takeaways from today, Guidewire Live is a series of persona-driven solutions. It's all powered by our Guidewire data platform. All of these applications, in some form, are included with a Guidewire Cloud subscription. All of them run natively in the cloud. And these capabilities underlie our investment into analytics and R&D, and we are orienting our roadmap and our product prioritization around the common industry pain points that we are hearing from our customers, which include inconsistent data quality and modeling techniques, a lot of data wrangling difficulty that actually ends up taking most of the time in a project to build a predictive model, which should not occur. Model deployment problems due to a lot of bottlenecks on the IT side. And of course, the inability to just unlock the true business value due to difficulties embedding the right analytics and the right data in the right screens at the right times. So we are working together to bring all the data and the analytics and the systems and the frameworks together to make all of this work nicely to help you unlock the value of your investment in the Guidewire Cloud. Okay, so before we get to the Q&A, I will just leave you with a concluding thought. And this is an exhibit on the past 5 years of industry experience on a return on equity, or as the insurance nerds say, the return on surplus from 2016 to 2020. And you can see overall, it's been a pretty rough roller coaster ride, particularly in some lines of business, but the industry has done overall. But what's really striking is there's a pretty wide dispersion between the bottom 20% and the top 20%, right? Those in the top 20%, those top performers are able to out-select at the point of underwriting. They're able to insulate themselves from adverse selection dynamics that are happening because of our changing insurance marketplace. And they're able to seize opportunities more quickly than others in their peer group. At Guidewire, we have the data and the analytics married with the core systems and the infrastructure to help you capture these opportunities that are going to be coming up in the P&C industry. And we are looking very forward to working with you to make it happen. Thanks very much.